So much of the Land Rover LR3 technology was ahead of its time. From the air suspension and adaptive terrain controls to the awesome looking headlights, the LR3 styling really holds up well after 18 years. One thing, however, that does look dated is the stereo. There are more confusing and non-functioning buttons than there are usable features. Well, that changes today. Join me as we fast forward from simple AM/FM CD player to Bluetooth, Apple CarPlay, and Android Auto capability. Which features and steering wheel controls are still going to work after our deck swap? Let's find out together after this short but awesome intro.
Obsession.
Brought to you by Waffle Square.
Hi, I'm Mike. Welcome to my Waffle Square, where I obsess about things and you get to benefit from it. Well, in episode 21 of our ongoing series where we are refurbishing this 2006 Land Rover LR3 with the V8 petrol engine, we are going to be removing the old dated deck. I'm going to show you every step to do that, all the supplies you're going to need for the conversion kit, the adapters, the wiring, how to do the wiring, all of it to get an awesome updated stereo system in your LR3. Now, I personally was not able to find all of this information combined into one video anywhere on the internet. So if you find this video helpful, will you please give it a thumbs up? All right, as you can see in this video here, it is an incredibly windy, blustery day here in Las Vegas. So let's drive our LR3 into the garage and get started. Oh, really quick before we head into the garage. Sadly, there is one feature that no longer operates after we do this deck swap. Be sure to watch till the end of the video to find out what that is, and maybe somebody out there can help us with a solution. Now, full disclosure as always, I'm not a mechanic. I just dress like one on YouTube. So you're just coming along for the ride to see how I'm doing it. And the first thing I'm gonna do is disconnect the battery so that we don't have any power going when we're disconnecting wires and stuff inside. And while we're at it, as always, when I disconnect the battery, I trickle charge it. All right, first things first, let's get this trim piece off. All you have to do is reach right back here on both sides, pop it loose. Easy. All right, we have 4 total T20 bits, 2 on each side of the deck itself. Got my little grip mat here. Let's get those out. This small piece across the top that has the hazards and the lock and unlock is holding in the deck right along this line. So let's also take its 2 screws out. And they're the same size, so you can just put them in the same pile. 4 screws down here on the climate control as well. And there we go. So we've got our antenna. These 2 plugs in the center here just get squeezed each on top and they slide out. That's a big one. There we go. And this last one with the 2 orange cables going into it just gets pushed on the side and then that one comes out. And there we go. That's the whole deck. Pretty easy to remove. On the top and the bottom of the deck is this locating pin right in the center. And that corresponds to the top of the HVAC selector and the bottom of the hazard light rail here. And that's why you have to remove all of this to get the deck out. Whew, that is a lot of wires. This accessory kit includes everything we're going to need. It is specifically designed for 2005 through 2009 Land Rovers as well as the Range Rover Sport. And in it you get the faceplate here that has this progressively enlarging feature to it, just like the deck that we removed. As you can see, that is going to look really nice. Then you have this cage here with a bunch of mounting hardware and a couple double-sided adhesive thick foam pieces that will go in here somewhere, probably for shock absorption. And then another very daunting bag of cables. This guy right here and its corresponding wire harness is super important. That is going to allow us to retain the steering wheel controls. Awesome. Then you have this one here is another Land Rover specific cable here. So this is for the antenna. We have to convert it from this proprietary plug here from Land Rover to this standard port here that's going to plug right into our deck. And the rest of these, I don't even begin to understand yet. So I'm not a huge audiophile guy. I chose this Alpine deck because it had all the features we were looking for, but most of all because of this space difference. We're going to free up all this space back here by choosing this deck. That's hopefully going to help us house the included wiring for the deck itself, and then all the wiring harnesses that make the two communicate. Now for the backup camera, I elected to go with this one right here. It's really small and sleek, and I'm hoping that it will fit right here on the light assembly for the rear license plate. Now what's cool about it is all you have to drill is this hole big enough for the threaded screw to go into to clamp it down, and they make the plug for it the same or a little bit smaller than the threaded screw here. So you'll slide that in and that will connect to this plug right here that has this yellow RCA jack. That is the same RCA jack that is on the included Alpine wiring harness. You can see here it says rear camera, but interestingly it also has a front view camera. That might be worth exploring. And then between these two, included in the box with the camera, is this nice long extension cable. And then if you happen to notice that the angle of the camera isn't exactly what you had hoped for, the kit comes with these very soft rubber wedges that you can put in there of varying degrees of severity there, and that can adjust one way or the other the camera angle. So that's pretty cool. Let's take a look at the back of the deck so we can get our bearings on where all the various inputs are. First, MIC, that's for the microphone. That is an included microphone that just plugs in right there. You're going to run that up the headliner for cellular phone use. Next is it says W remote. That is actually going to be where we input our steering wheel controls. Then we have the USB. Now, not only can you use this as an input for your phone or a USB memory card that you can put music and videos on, which you might be saying, I'm not going to do that, but you are going to want to hook up the included cable or some sort of cable into that guy and run this somewhere. I'm going to run it into our glove box because this is how you update the firmware. You don't do it communicating with the cell phone. You have to take the raw folder containing the firmware, attach it here, or better yet, if you don't want to remove all this, right here, so that you can update the firmware. And with as many updates as you get on cell phones and things, I really think we want to have that capability easily available to us. Next over here we have the Sirius XM input. If you're going to have Sirius XM radio, you will have some sort of box that will go into the back here right at that plug. Then we have the main wiring harness here that goes into what says power. Not only is this supplying power, but it also has all kinds of other hookups like the reverse sensor for turning on the backup camera, for the parking brake sensor, for being able to use all the functionality. And then if you had a power antenna, which we don't, and if you had a aftermarket amplifier, then these cables would be for that. These are the output speaker wires. We're not going to need those because instead we're going to use this camera and amplifier output that's included with the deck for our rear view camera, and then the front out, as I'll show you a little bit later when we prep the cables, is going to be part of how we hook up the output from the deck. All right, let's prep the cage and the trim piece. There is no up or down side to the cage. It's the same either direction. So that is going to simply slide through the trim piece here. It's thankfully a pretty decent friction fit, but as I'll show you in a minute, it's not enough of a friction fit when we get down here. Now, from right here, as it stands, there is nothing holding the cage to the trim piece. So I suppose you could glue it around here with maybe JB Weld or something like that. But instead, I am going to bend out these tabs because otherwise, as you can see, this can just flop in here, and we driving down the road, you know, it would obviously do that. So as it stands right here, I'm going to push these tabs out with my finger and then bend them up with a screwdriver or a pair of pliers to hold everything in place. And if I get right here, you should be able to see me do one of them. So I'll bend that out, grab it with a pair of needle nose pliers, and out we go just like that to hold it in place. So I'm going to go around and do all of those. Now once that's done, we're going to prep the deck. That slides through and clicks into place. I'll show you that in a moment. But this piece of trim has 4 little tabs, one on each corner, and that goes in here and is supposed to click into place. However, I've noticed that these tabs are not catching onto the plastic trim piece and are gonna be loose. So I think what I'm gonna have to do is take a heat gun, heat up these tabs, and bend them out a little bit like this to get a good snap-in fit. Next, let's attach the mounting hardware to the deck, and there are shockingly 0 instructions on how to do this. So it took me a bunch of trial and error to figure it out. Basically, we are going to attach this mounting plate to these 2 holes that line up, and then these little lines on this mounting plate correspond with the ones on the back of this little clip. And it has a very big range of where you can attach it. You screw it down like this, and then this slides in and clips into place on the cage. Now it took me a bunch of trial and error, but I figured out that these lines here that you can't really see on this one, so I've taken a Sharpie and I've marked them. Turns out that for the Alpine to fit into the conversion cage, the back clip has to go 1 forward of this first larger hash mark. Just trust me. It took like over an hour to get that figured out. And then with that, we line up right here with 2 holes exposed out the back. This is the only spot where it really lines up with the mounting threaded screw holes on the deck itself. So I'm just going to put 1 in now to hold everything in place to free up my hands so that I can put some blue Loctite on this. I don't want it vibrating in the car and coming loose. There we go. Simply flip it around. Same for the other side. Okay, those are in on both sides. Now we just take the deck and we slide it from the front into the cage, and you will hear these clips lock right into place. Nice and secure. All right, if you don't take my advice and attach these exactly as I've shown, and you're a little off one way or the other when it's time for the trim piece to go on, these little pieces can slide right in here and they overcome the clip, and you can slide the deck forward and out. Here's the trim piece with the 4 clips bent out with the heat gun. That's all cooled, and we're going to slide that into place and hope for a really good resounding click. Nice. Beautiful. Now it's time to prep our wiring harnesses, and I cannot stress enough how unhelpful the Scosche instruction manuals, installation manuals are. They leave a whole bunch of stuff out. Like, for instance, this one starts off telling you how to remove the deck step by step, which is great, but then it doesn't tell you how to hook up the wires, except one little spot right here that I'll get into in a moment. And then it says install the cage. No mention of those clips and how to affix them to the stereo. It just skips all that. And I'm not missing a page, it just skips it. And then it says do everything in reverse to put it all back together. So, not very helpful. It took a lot of studying videos from Alpine as well as fellow YouTubers to figure out how to hook up these wires, because there isn't much of a mention. The only thing that is specifically mentioned here is for Alpine stereos. It says the only thing we need to do is connect this 3.5 millimeter jack into the back of the stereo, remember the remote, and then of this bundle of wires right here, we're going to cut the green loop. There we go. All right, now it's time to mate together the various wires from the Alpine harnesses to this harness. All right, the frustration I endured to get to this point right here ought to at least be worth a thumbs up on this video. So, after several trials and errors of plugging everything in and getting no sound whatsoever, I have figured out the proper way to join these 2 wiring harnesses. First of all, the wires coming out of the steering wheel interface do not get connected. So you can just bundle those up and cover them up as I did here, because the only thing coming out of this interface we are going to plug into the Alpine deck is this jack right here. These RCA jacks coming out of this plug that is going to plug into the vehicle are going to go into the front out of the deck. Then we have this box over here. This is the fiber optic interface. So the orange fiber optic cables that are in that plug are going to go into here. That leaves this plug right here to plug into the back of the Alpine deck. And this is the one where combining all these wires gives us the biggest problem. Now the Scosche instructions do say right here, note the red accessory output wire from this interface is rated at 10 amp max, and this is the one that you should use for most of your decks, is basically what this is saying. It's also saying don't hook anything else up to that red wire because it could overload it and damage this unit. So because it specifically says this red wire coming out of the interface is the good one to use for the accessory, I mated those two up, the one coming out of Alpine and the one coming out of this unit. And I thought that was going to be good. The problem is this fiber optic unit has a red wire coming out of it as well. So what do you do with that one? Well, you can't hook it up to this guy because it said it would overload it. So instead, what I discovered is this remote amplifier trigger wire coming out of the Alpine harness needs to be joined with the red wire coming out of this fiber optic interface, which is right here, and the blue wire coming out of the actual plug. So those two come together and join with this one wire, the remote wire. If this isn't done, the deck will fire up, but you will have no sound. This yellow one is really easy. This is the full-time battery supply. So this keeps the clock running and all of your data stored in the deck itself. And it's simply the yellow wire connecting to the yellow wire. The purple and white wire coming out of the Scosche harness gets mated up with the orange and white wire coming out of the Alpine. This is your reverse sensor, and it's going to kick on your backup camera, and the screen will switch over to that. So those two get joined up together. This one right here is your parking brake sensor. So Alpine requires the parking brake to be on for the unit to have all of its functionality, meaning a few of your setup controls like linking a phone to the Alpine deck are not allowed if the car is in gear and you're driving down the road. It's a safety feature. What this cable needs to sense is ground, but you can't just permanently ground it so you can have functionality all the time. It needs to have the ground come off and back on. Now, if you want to bypass that, you can hook up a switch, other things. I wanted to actually use this function because Aspen is going to be a very young driver, and I don't think there's going to be any need for her to be doing a deep dive on her radio deck while driving down the street as a young driver. So I hooked it up to this green wire coming out of this box, which was designated in the manual as the parking brake wire. However, that does not work. I put the parking brake on and off on our LR3 and it didn't make a difference. I couldn't get into the rest of the functionality. Instead, I had to ground it a couple times and then I was able to link my phone. So what I have done is ordered a bypass kit off of eBay. Here's a picture of it. That should be in tomorrow, and we will hook that up and we will see if that takes care of the problem. It doesn't appear that we're going to have that functionality where the car will have to be in park because it just doesn't communicate. This remaining wire over here is the power antenna wire. I left it exposed outside of this bundle that I did to clean up the wires because I think I might need it for the bypass kit. This orange wire here is for illumination. meaning when you turn the lights on, it would communicate with the aftermarket deck and dim or brighten the lights based on the time of day. Alpine deck does not have a wire for that. It does it automatically some other way, so this wire is just drifting on its own. This pink one is for the speed volume sensor. If your deck has the ability to raise and lower the volume based on your speed, then this wire would hook to it. Alpine does not have that, so this one is left unhooked. Now, the wires coming out of the Alpine harness have these kind of protected connectors here. They're shielded, but I did not want just friction fit connections, so instead I used these solder sticks. They are shrink wrap sleeves with a bit of solder right in the middle. And as you see here, you put the two wires together so that the wires intermingle, and then take a heat gun. It seals the shrink wrap and liquefies the solder, and that gives you these really good connections that I have all throughout my wiring harness. As you can see here, I've started wrapping up the bits of the wiring harness with this woven protective wrap as well as this fabric tape. Well, I definitely think that looks a little bit more professional. All right, our bypass has arrived. Very simple device with 3 wires coming out of it. When you pull out these instructions, they are so tiny. I had trouble reading them. So if you scan this QR code, it'll bring up to your phone or tablet, or you can send it over to a computer screen, this same instruction manual, so you can read it. I've never seen a font this small. It's ridiculous. Why we couldn't get something to fold out, I don't know. But anyway, this blue wire has to go to the remote wire coming out of the harness. Sadly, it cannot go to the power antenna wire. It specifically states that in the instructions. Black wire is pretty easy. We're going to need to splice into this ground right here, so we'll have to redo that solder connection as well as this one. Luckily, we have some larger sizes of the solder sticks so that we can upgrade to putting multiple wires together. And then the green one is going to go straight up to the parking brake sensor. It says it can be the only wire connecting to the parking brake sensor wire heading into the harness. So you make sure you disconnect the one leading from the Scotch harness so that this is the only connection here. Once that's done, this tiny little microchip that is sealed inside of this wrapping here should fire up, and it should send a signal through this green wire of simulating parking brake off, parking brake on, to tell the Alpine deck that it's time to open up the advanced features such as hooking up our phone. So let's get to it. And so on down to our final connection. And now we've integrated the bypass into the wiring harness. I'm going to wait to clean all this up and tape it to test it and make sure everything's working. But let's head to the vehicle. All right, let's make our connections to the vehicle. First we have the antenna wire. Then we have the main plug here. Clicks right into place. And the fiber optic cable. Now I've temporarily run the wiring for the rear view camera out to the back by the trunk, and I'll show you what that looks like, but we're going to run that as well as permanently run the microphone in another video. For now, I have those two temporarily set up. All right, at the back of the deck, we want to hook up the antenna. Then we want to hook up the microphone for our cell phone. Then let's hook up the remote cable for our steering wheel controls. Next, let's hook up the amplifier and cameras plug. And remember, we have the front out coming out of that wire harness going into the two RCA jacks that are connected to the Scosche wiring harness. Then I'm going to hook up the USB cable and then the main power wire harness. All right, I'm going to grab a little stool to perch the deck on so you can see the functionality, and I'm going to connect the battery. All right, moment of truth. The battery's hooked back up. So let's turn the key on. That's a good sign. We got power. Then it'll ask us to confirm the language we want. And boom, sound. Excellent. All right, now let's try the steering wheel controls. So I'm gonna first try volume. Yep. Awesome. Now let's go to the double arrow left and right buttons. So you can see that's moving forward in my preset stations. And then the button back does the same. Then we have the mode button, which is taking us through the bands of the radio. If I hit it again, it's looking for a phone. So we know that works. All right, let's go into here and let's see if our bypass kit is working. So if I go into setup, everything's lit up. So I can go into system. Awesome. Let's turn the clock on. We'll go ahead and adjust it. 37. Now check this out. If I put my foot on the brake, go into reverse, the backup camera turns on, and we're also getting the built-in tones from the infrared sensors going. That's cool. Next, let's go to Bluetooth audio. All right, I'm going to set up the Bluetooth. So I'm just going to hit Bluetooth setup. Searching for a Bluetooth device. It found my phone. I'll click on that. My phone found the deck, so I'll click on that. It's asking if I want to allow contacts and favorites. I don't need that. And we are connected. All right, let's try some music. There we go. And I can control it from here. And I can also control it from my phone. Interesting. All right, so let's back out of here. And one thing I notice that I don't see is the CarPlay. Now, if we go into setup and we go into connectivity, you can see CarPlay is on, but I don't see any of the functions. Now, if we look at the current firmware, there is an updated firmware available. Maybe when we do that, it will bring up CarPlay, but for right now, I'm not seeing it. So I downloaded the latest firmware. I put it on a thumb drive, connected it to the USB cable that's in our glove box. The ignition is off. So let's turn it back on. And now it automatically connects with my phone, so that's cool. Let's turn that down. All right, so let's go into setup, information. Right up here you see firmware upgrade. And boom, it's starting the process. It says make sure you don't disconnect the battery power while it's running. The instructions that are included with the firmware upgrade say it could take a couple minutes. All right, through the magic of YouTube editing, you didn't have to see that whole thing run through, but it's just reset itself. The Alpine logo's coming back on. Now the instructions say you have to go back into the system and perform a hard reset. And we're right back to the original home screen of picking our language. Let's clear that. So it lost all of our presets. Probably lost our phone too, but we'll see. First, let's go in and check and confirm, yep, we have the new firmware, so that's good. Okay, we are reconnected, so let's go back to our home screen. And I still don't see Apple CarPlay. All right, after several hours, I figured out the issue with the Apple CarPlay. Turns out the manual that comes with the deck is actually the quick reference guide. So I went online to the owner's manual, and in the owner's manual it specifically states that to get the CarPlay or Android Auto functionality, you need to physically plug in the phone to the deck utilizing the USB port in the back. So if you want full CarPlay capability, another great reason to run that USB cord into your glove box or some other spot. So watch this as we plug the phone in. Now when we go to the main screen, there we have it. We have full Apple CarPlay. We've got the phone, we've got maps, so we can head right into here. We can go to my favorite car wash, and it goes
starting route to Legacy Self-Serve Car
right
Wash.
through
Head east on
the
West Joe Ray Avenue. Then
right through the speakers on the car. Fantastic. So you also have any other apps, as you see right here on this screen, any other apps that are compatible with Apple CarPlay. So watch as I swipe over here. You can see I have Audible for audiobooks. I have Pandora. I have Amazon Music. And then one of my daughter's coaches uses WhatsApp for me to send them videos. So you can see that's on here too. So more functionality than just the basic features. Any app that is compatible with Apple CarPlay is already on here too. Another tip that I saw in the manual, for those of you who use Android, you'll be just as easily able to put in a USB-C cable rather than this Lightning cable into your USB port. But for the Android phones, you need to download the Android Auto app first, and then that gives you functionality with your deck. So now's where the shallowness of this deck is going to come into play as we get all these wires back in here. Be sure to line up these pins here to get everything to start seating. And then right back in with our trim piece. And look at that. Man, that looks great. And there we have it, the step-by-step process of taking that outdated deck and bringing it up to today's technology. Now, as always, I'm going to leave links to everything I used in this video. Full disclosure, most of these will be Amazon affiliate links, so if you click on them and end up making a purchase, it won't cost you a thing, but I do get a small reward at the end of the month. It helps to justify all the time it takes to set up all these cameras and make these videos. So if you found this video helpful, will you please give it a thumbs up? It really helps the algorithm start suggesting it to more viewers like you. Also, please consider subscribing. I'm working really hard to put out good quality content. There's a lot more videos to come, and it's free. All you have to do is, if you're on YouTube, hit subscribe. If you follow me on Rumble, you just hit follow. It's really helpful to the channel. So in our next video, we are going to go through the process of running the wiring behind the panels to the back of the vehicle for the rear camera. I'm also going to take the microphone and run the wiring up the A-pillar over the headrest to right around the area of the middle of the front windshield so that both occupants can speak on the phone. Right now I have the microphone right over here behind the steering wheel, which is very convenient for installation. I'm just worried that its proximity to this vent right here will cause it to be difficult for the other person to hear us on the phone when the AC is blowing. So the viewers of this channel have been so supportive and great in the comments. I'm hoping maybe somebody can help us with one disappointing aspect I did find, and that is when we remove the old deck, one of the two large plugs in the back doesn't go to anything now. It's just sitting back there floating free. And as you can see right here, that plug must have gone to the functionality up on this screen because it's no longer doing anything. And I really liked the air suspension screen there. It helped show what the sensors were showing, the height we were at. It also showed the wheels when you're rolling. And I can imagine when you're off-roading and you're getting ready to go on a certain obstacle, looking to see where the tires are, all that could be very helpful. So I'm disappointed that that feature went away. If anyone out there can help, I'd love to hear it in the comments. Until next time, thank you for watching. I love this airplane. He's my favorite.